Okay, let's do it.
Okay. What's the structure real quick? Do I take off these headphones and then
Yeah,
talk
I'm
to
gonna take
you
off my headphones at some
yes.
point because
on
otherwise
the...
there's a delay, you
I'll
know?
hear you in spaces.
Okay, so you're ready to join, right? So I'm not awkwardly just there
Ready
alone.
to join. Leaving this audio.
Okay, I'm gonna take my headphones off.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm just setting up my spaces. I'm adding a recording
Can
icon.
you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Cool.
Yes.
Oh my goodness,
Same.
I feel so bad at iOS. Hello! Sorry, we're just getting set up, so we're a little bit slow here. Welcome. So last week tonight. Sorry, I could not. So, hello everybody. For those joining, this is us trying out Twitter Spaces again. Should I post in Discord as well? I think I can
Oh, yeah.
do that. So, every second Thursday we record our podcast, and now we're trying to do it through Spaces so that it's like a thing. So it turns out, by the way, I tweeted them about the audio because they said that you could sometimes get it out. They just never reply to me. I'm not cool enough or something. It was very strange.
Well,
so that was a
I
bit
think
awkward.
I figured out how to record if we have someone join this time, because last time I was just using the like Android screen recorder that just came out kind of recently, and
that would
it
be
recorded the first 4 minutes of audio and the first
Right.
24 minutes of video with no audio, and then lost everything else. So
Right. All right. So we're recording our podcast. I'm pasting a link into our Discord. Welcome. And this is why I said we should talk about what we're going to talk about this week. But
let's talk about what we're going to talk about.
Well, what's on your minds? And hello, everybody, and welcome. This is just the pre-show, unfortunately, so bear with us for a second here.
Oh god.
What just happened?
What was that?
What is happening?
Yeah, I don't know. I have something happened. I'm so sorry. Can you still hear me?
Yep. That was very strange.
Yeah, so what happened is that the headphones I use for recording, they connected to my iPhone. So suddenly all kinds of stuff was happening and I couldn't hear you anymore. So
Oh, very strange. So, hello and welcome. I think we're just like setting up the show for those who are just joining us. We have it's complicated to record a Twitter space because as far as I know, A, it doesn't work on an iPad, which would make it a lot easier.
Right.
And B, like you can't record straight from a phone trivially when there's no headphone jacks anymore. So, so it would be a lot easier like 10 years ago. So like the first thing that maybe is worth talking about because it's top of mind for me is maybe the Medium thing that happened this week.
oh yeah.
Which was like a small, large deal, I feel. So, like, we can start there. I can tell you what I know that happened. Then we can talk about everything else that happened this week. Which
Especially because the Medium thing is kind of a big deal, but me as a person who doesn't really write, didn't wasn't filled in on it. I also really want to talk. I also kind of want to talk about the Slack thing that happened with adding the other people to your DMs only instead of just to your space, which is super strange.
Yep.
Me and Zach had a little of a tryout there, which was interesting.
Oh yeah, you got it to work?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've used Slack Connect before, which is where you share a channel with another organization's channel. And anybody that's in there, you can DM, once they've been added to the shared channel that you're in.
Right.
And it looks identical to the new Slack DMs. It's just you're doing it without having a shared channel.
Interesting.
But everything else is the same.
Interesting. Well, do you want to do the intro? I feel like we could talk about Medium, Slack, Discord, and like
Digital
whatever
Ocean.
else. At Digital Ocean. Woo! That's a good one. And then we can just launch into it. Because we have a pretty tight time box. I have a UX review at 10, so I have to log off 10 minutes before to at least pretend like I'm organized.
Okay, let's do it.
Go for it.
Hey, you're listening to Charge Tech Podcast, episode 166. The podcast that looks at tech and how it's shaping the world around us. I'm one of your hosts, Zach Grosser, and joining me are...
Frederique and Matti.
Owen Williams. And we're live
Hello,
on Twitter Spaces too, which
friends.
is fun. So thank you if you're listening there. We're just hanging out. But what's been happening in your world? So, like, I was going to say welcome to day 380 of endless lockdowns, but I don't know how it is there.
I had my
Well,
second pandemic birthday last weekend.
Oh,
Oh.
fuck. Yeah, you did.
Happy pandemic-versary. Pandemiversary? I don't know.
Zach's birthday last year was the first digital birthday I attended.
Yeah, me too, actually. I think we drank and played digital games, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was funny because, well, there was nothing funny about it, but it was funny because I recall it was like midnight there or something. You were all lit, and it was like 5 p.m. here, so we were like not buzzed at all.
I had a whole bottle of wine by myself. Sorry.
Yeah.
We'd planned a champagne and poker night,
Mm.
and so we had enough champagne for like 6 people.
Oh,
But then
wow.
all of a sudden it was just the 2 of us, and so that's how things kind of got out of hand.
Right.
But it was
Interesting.
actually also the most fun digital birthday I went to, because then I was still, a little bit positive about everything. Anyway, we just had elections here in the Netherlands. That was interesting.
This last week, right?
Yeah.
Did you have to go and vote in person? That's probably the most
Yes.
important question I have for you. Interesting.
Yes. They had this new concept which is called a drive-through voting booth.
What?
Yeah, you
Like
could
a bike
you
through?
could vote it. No, you could vote in your car.
Oh, what about bikes though? I feel like this is missed opportunity.
But the funny thing about the voting in the car thing is that you were only allowed to do it if you were in the car alone.
So you if you had multiple people to vote, did you you have to drive around the block and drop them
Yeah.
off and come back?
Or you could vote for someone else. That was possible. You could
Wow.
that
Oh,
there's
I
an
recall.
option
Yeah,
for
the
that.
proxy voting.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about that in the last Dutch election because we still lived in the Netherlands then, and Fem was overseas, but I wasn't allowed
Yeah.
to vote for her because I am not a citizen, which is weird. I had all the shit, and they're like, "No, but you can vote at the water board elections." I'm like, "Okay, cool."
I feel like they
Waterboarding.
should let taxpayers vote.
Or permanent residents, at least. Although I wonder what New Zealand does. Probably nothing as well. I can't vote in any country forever. It sucks. I can
on,
vote in New
doesn't-
Zealand, but
Yeah. You could
I
do that
actually
by
love
email,
telling
right?
people about voting. Yeah, I voted. Well, it wasn't email. So you log into your online New Zealand ID thing. They have one ID, and you go to the elections thing. You download a PDF, you print it. You have to fill it out with wet ink, and you just take a photo of it on your phone, and you go to this website, and it's just upload a JPEG, and you voted. It's bananas. It only works for people overseas. You're not allowed to do it if you're in the country. But I love it because people are like, "That's so insecure. How could you possibly vote through a picture?" I'm like, "Well, the PDF is from the secure thing, so I really had to do a lot of stuff, and then when I upload the picture, they check it. So
Sure. Yeah, it was
I
weird.
really liked-
there was a big win on the right side, unfortunately.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
which is weird and also sad for many reasons. But we shouldn't talk about this for too long. But yeah, the voting booth, drive-through voting booth was funny. I didn't go because I don't have a car.
I just have to, by the way, apologize to people on Twitter Spaces because the captions completely don't understand me. It's just putting cuss words in there because of my accent. I'm gonna turn them off.
I also put the Android system captions on for hopefully the screen recording that actually works this time.
Oh, that's cool.
So we may have captions, but they definitely aren't super accurate. But I would say they're a step up from the Twitter ones.
Right. So we'll see how it goes, I guess. Questions though. Let's just let's go straight into the Medium thing. I'm spicy. I'm still angry. So this week it was pretty hard to avoid on Twitter, but I mean a lot of people probably don't see media spicy news, but Medium announced, I don't even know where to start on this thing. It's so confusing. Ev Williams, one of the Twitter boys, announced that Medium is making changes yet again, pivoting to something else. Who knows what the fuck? And if you read the post, you probably came away none the wiser. Even I read it and I was like, yes, I know less than when I went in. But the TLDR is they had started investing in first party publications last year, and I think they had about 9 of them. It was 1.0, there was one called Elemental, there was one called Zora, there was a bunch of them, and they were all really focused on specific niches. I wrote a weekly column for them through that time, so they actually paid me over that time, every week to do that, which was really cool. Well, they seem to have killed it now. And so it was really weird. I didn't even know how to read the post. It was something about reading between the lines. It was Substack is hot and we want to be that and we are not. And but there's all this weird stuff with it because they were we're pivoting away from publications because we don't think that's the future of journalism. It didn't seem to be working, even though we had 700,000 paying fucking subscribers, which is insane for any upstart media outlet. 700,000 paying subscribers is ridiculous. It's so many. And so anyway, but as a result, they're getting rid of this thing, and it's going to be about individuals, whatever. And man, it's a shame. So it sounds like what's happening is the people at 1.0 and all of my friends who work there, which is a huge bummer, have been offered basically a buyout, or you can stay and be the random editor for whoever these people are, that or whatever Substack ripoff, whatever they're doing. And this comes, by the way, a month after they failed to unionize. Definitely not a coincidence, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say wasn't there a weird thing with the union the other week, basically. Yeah,
and so look, that happened. It was I think it lost by 1 vote, which is a huge bummer, and so it sounds like. So I'll tell you this: I actually have no idea. I'm saying, I have no idea what's happening because my editor. I said to him, don't worry about me. I'd rather you worry about your job, and you can tell me what's happening later. So I literally know nothing. I didn't hear from I don't know, presumably whoever's left. I have no idea. Yeah, it's pretty shit.
Do we know what Medium is actually gonna do instead?
Well, I assume it's pivoting back to what it was in the first place. Medium, the original form of Medium was individual people making posts and growing their individual audiences. And it seems pivoting back to that, but with email in them, a newsletter thing in the mix. And I'm just I resent the fact that it's all trend based. First of all, everything in media is always like this, unfortunately, and Medium tends to do that. This is the 3rd pivot I've been involved in, at least at Medium. The previous one, I was doing it on my own. They are pivoting back to now. And then I was very lucky to meet Damon Beres, the head of, he's the managing editor of 1.0 by chance in New York. And I literally asked him dead straight. I was like, hey man, can I, would you be open to doing a column? And that's how it ended up. It was just pure luck. And then that was amazing. And just to be clear, I am mostly okay, but I'm I have internalized it because I didn't lose my job. This was a side thing. I'm very thankful that they even paid me for so long, but it is a huge bummer, I think, for the people who work there, because they were doing great stuff. They had written original stories that really they had a big one about Amazon at one point. They had shit, there was one that actually changed the course of something that I'm completely blanking on right now. But like they had a really big impact based on just the fact that they existed for a year. And I think that like the trend away from publications completely is a real shame. Because while Substack has done interesting things, there is some garbage shit on there. And like people need editors. The shit, if I didn't have an editor, the shit that I would publish it's way worse. Like the amount of edits that they help me with and stuff, they make you a better person, and it's easy to discount that, I think. And like you'll see on Twitter, if you're on journalism Twitter like I am, people are complaining about their editors all the time. But it's a love-hate relationship, right? Like I really value editors because it's like they help you have better, clear, concise thoughts. And that was really cool that Medium was providing that for people. And so it's a shame. I don't know. I have to figure out what I'm going to do with it. I still want to write stuff. I had 2 stories lined up. Like, I don't really know what's going to happen. I'm glad I didn't, like, write them and submit them yet.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't there also something happen at Substack recently where kind of, like, the whole thing fell apart?
I tried.
Yeah, Nazis.
Well, so yeah, I mean, there's the thing where they don't want to moderate it. I mean, the other thing, so like there's this viral thing that people are talking about, which is like the scam of Substack. And basically they, I think it was a little oversold into, like, it's not a scam. They were supporting writers for their first year, but they had done it in a shady way that it looked like they were earning actual revenue. And so they'd show up on the leaderboard and like success begets success, whatever it is. I mean, on one side of this, I'm like, it's really cool that they're giving people the money to go out and do journalism. That was the hardest part when I ran my paid newsletter, which is weird. I did it 4 years before they existed. The hardest part was the first 6 months because, like, you have to convince people to pay you, and then you have to do it long enough that they see the value. And so that's huge. But then on the other hand, they're like, we don't want to moderate the platform. It will shake out itself. And it's like, it's the same as Facebook. It's the same shit. They're saying, one hand is saying we don't moderate the platform. The other hand is paying people to write stuff. And it's just like incompatible. Like you are a media company at that point.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
I had sort of read that they were paying writers on top of like the subscription, fees that they were collecting for people subscribe so that they could get more writers to go out and say, look at all the money I'm making writing on Substack to get more people to sign up. But like, it's like YouTube where 99% of people that upload will never make any money.
Yep.
It's a loss for them. And so I think Substack's in the same position, but they were paying people to kind of pretend like that's not the case.
Yeah, and I don't know, it's a bummer because like people, to like pivot back to the Medium thing, I think Medium historically got a bad rap. Like they did a lot of good stuff for journalism. Like they were paying people. Like Zora is a great vertical that probably wouldn't exist somewhere else. They're like paying for people of color to write stories that are not getting placed anywhere else. And Medium gets a really bad rap. Like they don't get enough credit for that stuff. But also on the other hand, fuck them because they threw everybody under the bus for like the 4th time. Like how many times are they going to do this before realizing that like people just don't trust them anymore? Like the 3 pivots I can remember, and correct me if there were any more. Maybe it was just 2 that I can remember. At one point it was like they pivoted away from individuals and they started adding publications and blah, blah, blah. You could have like your domain name. And then they were like, oh, but you can even take payments and there's a membership thing now, blah, blah, blah. And there was that really popular publication that moved over. And then they were like, no, we're removing all the payment stuff. It's gone next week. Good luck. Bye. And then they removed custom domains. That was the second thing. And they said like, no, it's just for individuals. Then 1.0 and like all the first party publications came back. And then now they're saying that they're pivoting back because they've added customization to the editor now. You can like add your own fonts to the site, which is a whole thing. You can add custom domains again. And it's like, what do you want to be?
Yeah.
Are you a CMS? Are you a media company? Like, what is happening?
Yeah, exactly. It's like they're going back and forth on the same issue. I remember them having a very, very aggressive paywall.
Yes. Oh,
and
yeah.
it was like
Medium
one of
loved
the
the
first
paywall.
ones.
Yeah.
It was like one of the first ones in the media landscape, and I remember there being so much like talk about like how if it's good or bad, and
Yeah.
you know, if information is free or not, which is interesting. But
So you know what's really interesting is I always knew that the Medium thing for me was too good to be true. They were paying more than any media outlet I had ever worked with for what I was doing, which was amazing. But I will tell you this: 6 months ago, there was a pay cut to all freelancers that I don't think I've seen reported anywhere. It was about a 33% pay cut. And so they were saying back then they were shoring up, you know, they're like, because like if you're blowing that much money on freelance, like I understand it at some point, like you have to do something. And so there was about a 33% pay cut. And I have to say, as the person who's always been outside of the US getting US dollars, I'm like, even that amount is still good, man. And so that happened, but I definitely had a moment there where I was thinking like, oh, this is going to end at some point. And I'm really grateful that it existed. And frankly, the most frustrating thing is I don't know like what's happening. And there's other columnists. So there were about 5 of us who wrote weekly columns, and other columnists actually rely on that for an income. Like I'm thankful that it was more of a side thing, but some of the other columnists that I work with don't. You know, I would be freaking out because it's like it's a good chunk of your revenue if that's your full-time like freelance gig.
yeah, but also I was always, because when you started writing for them, I was kind of hoping that this was for once something that would prove that this is possible, because I know as an illustrator I also work for publications sometimes, and the amounts of money that are being offered for the amounts of work that I have to do are insane. The pay is extremely low.
Right.
Like the pay is extremely low and the workload is extremely high, and then also deadlines are super short. And I only imagine that this is the case also for writers. I have heard some, numbers being thrown around, which are all pretty low for like big publications. And even if you write for something, and maybe specifically if you write for something that has like a really good name,
I'll tell you what. The big names pay less. I've had the New York Times offer me $150.
Yeah, for an article, right?
Yeah. So like it's the big names tend to be stingier, especially the ones that are like really famous or old school publications. The New York Times wanted me at one point to write about Fortnite. The one time I did it, they offered me $150 and then they fucking ghosted me. So good times. Others like Vice pay terribly. Like The Verge pays okay. But Medium was paying, I would say, 3x, maybe more.
But the thing is also that if you know what kind of, if you're talking about $150, we're not talking about like giant numbers either. What Medium was paying was probably what it should be, not heaps of money either, Yeah. So I was really happy to see them pay fairly for once, especially in editorial, especially on the internet, because I think that's the way that we have to go somehow.
But also the stability, like getting weekly columns have largely died off in general. Like it's been really hard. I've found that the relationship is usually like you're pitching them. It's not a commitment. It's just like you're pitching them random shit to see what will stick. Whereas Medium was like, hey, every week come with a story. We'll guarantee it if you bring the ideas. And it was a two-way street too. They were like, hey, there's this thing, and it was a very different relationship from working with Vice, for example, which was like, here's this one thing that you'll get assigned. Also, you have to write it, and we'll pay you like 8,000 years later. After it's published.
We pay you in 90 days.
It's 90 days after publication in many cases too, which is insane.
Yeah.
Like, it's so long. But anyway, it's a huge bummer. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm really worried about the people who work there. They had, I would say they had some of the best talent. Like they had hired people from The Verge. They had hired people from Vice. They had hired people from Slate, Quartz, all of that stuff. And just to like a year and a half in is the very Ev Williams thing to do. It's like, just like blow it up.
Well, and I would say like laying off people is always shitty, but doing it during a pandemic when there's not a ton of job opportunities for everybody. I mean, that's my understanding is it's high unemployment rate, so it's not really a fucking good thing to do at all.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm very curious to see, like, I don't feel like if Substack is in play, and as much as I don't like it, it has a lot of hype, and I think people are going there by default right now. My hot take, maybe to wrap this up, is own your audience is probably like the thing I would teach you here is like, Substack, you sort of own your audience, but you don't really. Like, I'm very seriously looking at other platforms like Ghost, which also has a membership thing now, but you host it yourself and like you have total control over it, versus like on Medium, I have whatever subscribers, but I'm going to have to beg them to follow me somewhere else. And I assume like at Substack, you can get the emails, so I'll allow it. But you know what I mean? Like, I'm now at the point where I'm like, okay. And I understand why people are going independent, but I do think there's risks with that model too. I did it for 2 years. The biggest problem with the Substack model is once you start writing and people are paying you, if you take a break, they're going to stop paying you.
Yeah, exactly.
At least that was my experience, is like you really had to work hard to explain to people like, hey, I do need to have downtime. Like, here's what to expect. Sometimes you'll get this. Sometimes you'll get that.
Golden shekels, even worse than work.
Yeah, editors are good, by the way. Editors are great. People should stop complaining about them. Some of the drivel you would see published otherwise is just ridiculous. But anyway, enough about that. I can bring back anything I learn in the next few weeks.
Should we see if anybody in Spaces wants to chime in?
Well, if you have a hot take on Medium or anything to add, we'd love to hear it. Just note that we are recording.
Thank you for.
And I did
Hopefully
put a little recording icon, but anyway. So it's interesting.
Can people do the thing where they put on their hand or whatever? Sorry.
Yeah, how does it work?
Yeah, how can people say they want to chime in? Maybe they can react with some sort of emoji or something.
It's hard to know who is who as well. Like, oh, Juan is here. Hello, Juan. So maybe let's do that for the Slack segment, like if that's okay, because I don't feel like really talking about Medium anymore. I'm a little bit cranky about it.
Okay, that's okay.
If people don't mind, I think we'll like open the floor when we actually come to the Slack thing. Okay, Juan. Okay, I'm going to add Juan because I haven't talked to him in a very long time. I'm sorry to snob anybody else. Hello, Juan. You can speak.
You're being recorded.
It says connecting. It's probably his French internet. No, so rude.
Yeah, he still shows up as a listener now, but okay. We'll see how this works.
While we wait for whatever the hell Spaces is doing, let's just like... Oh, bugger. Okay, Spaces is great. So let's talk about Slack. Yesterday, they... I can't even... What a day. Yesterday, they announced that you could DM anybody on Slack. Anybody outside of your team. And by the way, this was pre-announced last year at their conference. They have a conference. They said there was a beta for this. But they opened it for everybody yesterday. And the idea was, it's very simple. You can click a button and invite anybody based on the email address and talk to them on your Slack. So it's sort of like MSN or like AIM or something, where it's like all in one
you know
window.
You know what the weirdest thing is about this? And I've been in a situation before where I have like 5 Slack groups. One of them is like a private one that I have with my friends and so on and so on. But most of them are companies that I work with freelance, right? I've had it happen. Hey, Juan is a speaker now, I think.
It's true. Hello.
Hello.
Hey, friends. I just wanted to say, Zach, your voice, you're definitely using a professional microphone. It sounds so good.
I know. I want to know how he's doing that.
You hooked it up to your phone?
Yeah. And then, I have a Rode, like an NT Mini, whatever they're called, plugged into my phone. And then from there, I'm pulling the audio out to a different computer so that we can record you, which, like, consent to, please. So that you can... Perfect. Yeah, good. So that you can be on the podcast as well.
Oh my God. Honestly, it was just a thing that stuck out for me because I've been in a couple of spaces and, the audio quality in general is a lot better than Clubhouse already, but you're just taking it to the next level. It's crazy.
Now I need to adapt it so I can do
Juan,
this too.
are you also on Clubhouse?
Yeah, I'm on Clubhouse. Yeah, I've tried it a couple times. Been in a couple of rooms. It's actually interesting. There's a lot of... Sorry, I'm totally taking over the conversation. If you guys want to talk more about Medium... Club. It's fun. There's a lot of there's a lot of stuff around UX writing, content design, which is interesting. You can find a lot about like different niches. But the thing that I like a lot about Spaces is it's just about hanging out. Really, like you just jump into a space and there's people talking, and it feels like a living room a little bit. There's not really oftentimes there's not really a topic or anything. So you're just hanging out with people, meeting them. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
So the funny thing is that this morning I had a moment where I was, I think, just scrolling on Instagram or something, and a post mentioned tonight on Clubhouse, and I was like, wow, I haven't heard about Clubhouse in definitely like a week or so. Like I saw no one talk about it or post about it.
That's
I had already forgotten about it.
In the modern times, right?
Kind of an example to me of like how smaller companies, and I know Clubhouse is well funded, but like smaller companies in headcount have trouble competing with larger companies because Twitter was so fast to be able to add Android support, and I still will probably not be able to join Clubhouse for kind of a long time. Yeah,
another year or something. It's kind of funny that I can only make this Twitter space from my iPhone. Like I could join them, but I cannot make it there. Juan, I do want to ask you though. Do you have a take on Medium as a fellow writer? Well, like you've written for a few publications, right? So like I don't know what your view on it would be.
Yeah, I have a take. I guess for me, after working at the Next Web and then like you obviously, and then kind of rolling into freelancing. I started off doing, freelance journalism, and I generally, most of it, I really didn't love. It was really, if I look back at it now, like seeing that today, like in today's world, I'm, more of a product oriented writer. Back in the day, like I found it really hard to keep, pitching stories and, getting paid relatively low wages for quite a lot of work from time to time. Like, you've written for Vice, you've written for Motherboard, some of them pay really badly. And it's a lot of work, and you have to deal with, you're constantly pitching. And I don't know, I very quickly wanted to kind of get, get away from that. So for me, I think it's sad because I knew from you, like you've told me in the past that Medium paid well, which was, really, really cool. Especially because, 1.0 and all that stuff, they had a clear direction. It was pretty cool. Good writers connected to it. I guess it's sad that doesn't, that's not going to happen anymore, seeing as they were one of the few that they were paying actually very, very competitive wages.
I don't know who else is even doing it.
Exactly. Yeah. And now we're stuck in the situation again where you kind of have to, hover between, if you're a freelance writer today, freelance journalist, it's hard work. Like you have to pump out a lot of pitches. You have to pump out a lot of, you have to get in touch with a ton of different people.
It's a shitload of emailing.
Yeah, and I mean, if you would have, if you would be able to get connected to, previously to one of those Medium verticals, then you'd have a steady stream of income, and they treat you generally very well. I mean, that's what you told me at least.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely very unique, and like I said, not super sustainable. But it is the other thing that I didn't mention that you just reminded me of is like the really fucked up thing, and I'm not calling out Vice. It's just the one that's at the top of my head. All of them work like this. You pitch the story. I would say most of story writing is just emailing people, first of all. That's the lamest shit. You pitch the story, you send it to them, and then you probably spend a good amount of time, like a week or like a ton of time emailing them, doing edits and shit. So you eat all this time. Some of them take longer, some take less. And then like you have to get it published, which takes even longer. And then the payment clock starts. But if it doesn't get published at any time in there, you also often don't get paid. So you do all of the work. And if the story gets stale by the time that it's out, you don't get paid, or you get paid like, I think Vice was like 20% or something, and then like 20% of a few $100 is like, meh.
I've been there. Yeah. It really just adds to the stress of, being a freelancer in the first place. And I don't know, especially when I just got started, all of that stuff was just way too much for me to handle. So I quickly made a plan to kind of get out of that and turn more towards product writing. But,
Totally.
There's a lot of people who are, journalists primarily and really love the work that they do and kind of want to continue doing that. But yeah, the reality of it today is that it's pretty hard to make a living, especially being freelance.
I mean, I was doing it on the side for a reason.
Yeah, I always wondered how people do this, because as an illustrator that sometimes works in editorial for me is, I always kind of see it as a treat, because it's usually very creative work. It's usually very like nice jobs. It's very fast, so it doesn't eat up a lot of time. But it doesn't pay at all, basically. Well, I mean, you get some money, but, compared to what you can get for other commercial jobs, it's very low. So I'm doing it kind of for the love of it, rather than for... But I also know people who do this full time, and I always wonder how.
I think it'll be interesting for me, because I mean, again, I'm thankful to have a job that's not related to any of these changes, but I still want to write sometimes, and so maybe I'll start
really
writing on my own blog again, I guess. Like Charged comes back, I don't know, like, so I have to figure that out. Because I definitely don't want to go around pitching people for $150, so I might as well do it for my own benefit at that point.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, to get back to your point, Freddie, what you were saying about kind of doing it just for the love of it. Like, there's definitely been, some of the worst paid jobs that I did as a freelance journalist or writer were the ones that I loved the most, because I just came up with this batshit crazy idea. And they were like, sure, we'll give you $100 to write this. And I would spend, 3 days doing research. And oh my God, that was...
It is fun though. That's the annoying thing. That's what really bums me out, is I really do love it. And it's really easy to be annoyed by it. And it is genuinely fun. It's just a real shame that the value isn't there. And I don't want to write takes all day on Substack. I know there's a whole industry there, but it's just not for me. So... yeah.
Well, I guess delayed take here, but isn't Medium now trying to directly compete with Twitter's, review acquisition?
Oh my God, I forgot about that. Twitter owns a newsletter tool. Do you remember 8 million years ago there was that rumor that Twitter would buy Medium at first, and then it was Twitter would let you make a Medium post directly from the editor was the next thing. Neither of those ever happened.
I remember this. I think we were both at TNW back then.
Yeah, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, Twitter's gonna do one thing," and it took 10 years for them to do anything.
Well, they're doing things now.
Yeah, well, they are. They genuinely are. But it is funny to think about that, I think, in that context. Because F was a founder of Twitter, right? I guess.
Yeah. They've been linked somewhat, I think.
I don't know. I'm going to reserve my hot takes on that guy because, I don't know what's happening with my column yet, but maybe... I'll get really harsh otherwise. I don't know. It's just a real shame. Technology people coming into the journalism industry and being I will disrupt this. And then after 1 year... being oh, that was too hard. No, fire everybody. It's just a repeating cycle. It's terrible.
Yeah.
I'm bored of disrupting now. Bye.
Yep.
I feel like I saw a tweet call it the disease of scale, because Ev sold Blogger to Google for a lot of money. And so the 700,000 paid subscriptions on Medium, that's 35 million revenue, isn't enough for Silicon Valley. But outside of that, you'd be oh, that's a really decent business that you have. You make $35 million a year, and as long as you keep your operating costs below that, you're profitable. But it's well, it's not $1 billion company, and that might be why the pivot happens. And I think that's short-sighted, to be honest.
Indeed. Juan, I don't know if you want to stay on to talk about Slack or not, but have you tried the shared DMs?
I have one more thing to add to something kind of related to the topic we're talking about right now before you all go on to talk about other more interesting stuff. But it was what you were saying earlier, Zach, about kind of when we were talking about Clubhouse and innovation and how big companies can quickly out-innovate smaller, less funded companies. Mm-hmm. I think Spaces and everything that's happening around, like, how do you call this? You call this like audio platforms, I guess?
It's like serendipitous audio. I don't even know. It's like shit podcasts.
But everything that's happening here, like, you're seeing that, I think from a technical point of view, Twitter has already kind of outperformed Clubhouse just in sheer quality of their product, even though they're still in a beta state. Like, the audio quality is better. You can do reactions. Like, you don't have to do the stupid mic muting thing where you kind of, if you want to clap, like, you have to mute and unmute yourself really quickly. All the hacked stuff. It's really quite, early days for them. And then, there's rumors that Facebook is working on something. There's other players that are, maybe interested in doing something in this space. And all of these big companies, they can just quickly drop like a team of 10 or of 30 developers and designers on it and kind of build something that totally blows Clubhouse out of the water from a technical point of view. The only thing that Clubhouse is going for them right now is that they, have a lot of users. But you see those graphs, and there was a Twitter thread that went viral recently. This one dude who kind of predicted that Clubhouse would die down quickly over time with like the user numbers kind of dipping already. Maybe it was just a hype for them. And maybe seeing as Twitter already has, that whole social graph and people already using it, maybe they can actually build it into something that, will last long into the future. And personally, I'm rooting for them.
That's a big chunk of why it's appealing to me is it's like in my feed. Like I don't have to go to another app or whatever. And usually I'm like, I love the independence, but like in terms of Twitter, I think this is like, it just makes a lot of sense. Like it fits the shit posting on the feed. It fits like it is like the least jank pivot I've ever seen, and it's quite amazing.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
How has Spotify not done this?
They must be kicking themselves about this.
I know. I mean, they own Anchor. I still think about it every day. How disappointed I am that Anchor never did anything really.
Good times.
Yeah. Anyway, that was me just dropping some my opinion on all of you.
Some
and
wisdom
now
bombs.
I'll leave you to discuss Slack and other more interesting things. But this was super fun, and
thanks for
putting me on the stage. Hope everybody's doing well.
Bye.
Doei Juan.
Thanks for joining.
All right, now we'll talk about the Slack thing now.
We have 10 minutes. Let's.
I have, as I said at the start, I have to go do my actual job after this. So yesterday,
Anyway.
Slack announced the thing. You can DM anybody. Have you used it? First of all, I don't answer yet. I can't because I'm on an enterprise company where they have to turn it on and they have blocked it.
Well,
So
the thing is, though, okay, I was like in the middle of a story before we added Juan, but the thing is, you can add it to any Slack. So, for instance, you can add it to your friend Slack or to like a work Slack. But for me, I don't know if a friend Slack is really a thing anymore. I do that.
I think I only have friend Discords now.
But anyway, the thing is that at some point I got invited by a company to be on one channel in their Slack. And so basically what happened is then they send an email so I can add that channel to one of my other Slacks. But it feels wildly inappropriate.
Shared channels. Yeah.
Yeah, it felt wildly inappropriate to add my client to one of my other clients' Slack and have them as a shared channel.
That
feels super strange. But it feels
so funny.
equally weird to add a shared channel to my friend's Slack. So I was like, this is weird. I will never use this. And they should just add me to one channel in their Slack if they wanted to do this. But I'm never going to do this thing because it's very strange. And I don't want to have a client in a client. That sounds like a fucking nightmare to me. This new thing where you can do this with DMs works exactly the same. So for instance, Zach asked me to join or to accept his DM request basically. And then I got like a modal to pick which Slack group I wanted to add Zach to. So now I have added Zach's DM channel to my friend Slack group, which is a friend Slack group. So like the picture is a picture of a glass of beer, and you know it's all very loosey goosey, weird and stuff. But if I hadn't known about this and I had just done it because Zach is someone I work with or whatever, suddenly now he's in my weird beer channel or whatever the fuck. Like it just crosses borders for me that I don't feel comfortable with. Right now with Zach, it's fine because that's just the way it is. But I could easily see, because this is a work tool strictly, I could easily see this happening in a way that is just really strange. And I don't think I would ever use this feature at all. Only if maybe you're working with multiple companies, or maybe if you have I've also heard that sometimes separate teams have separate Slacks. Then this is nice.
Enterprise thing, yeah.
But like for a person,
I like the idea of being able to talk to people without joining a whole Slack. I mean, that sort of appeals to me because like when I was freelance in particular, I was in 80,000 Slacks. I would love to be able to DM my 3 friends from my work Slack, but then it does cross a weird thing where it's like, can I shitpost to my partner?
But also
in my work Slack, does my admin see it?
But also, yeah, exactly. Where does everything go? Because apparently admins can read all the DMs, which is also very shit. But also, why is it not just like in Discord where you have your channels and then friends? Like that DMs makes more sense to me. Yeah. But and the other thing that I was thinking about, and I also saw a tweet about this that went viral, is that the fact that like there is no tools in Slack to do any moderation or anything. They're like, you're a company, so you have HR. You can't block anyone. And now suddenly you can just add anyone?
Yeah.
You do have to accept their requests, but still.
On launch day, you could send a message with the invite, and someone like immediately was like, this is how you can harass somebody, because the message comes from Slack directly, so you can't just like block one email.
And even if it's disabled for your workspace, you still get the email. Like Slack knows that Shopify can't do it, but you could still email me. And so I think they ended up turning that off within a few hours of launching it. But it was fascinating. Like I saw a good thread from a former engineer at Slack that said the only time that Slack improves things is when they get abused. And so like they were like, the only way that this gets fixed is if people report spam enough that their deliverability goes to hell. And I was like, that sucks. Like, that really sucks.
Yeah, that's the worst thing.
So
that's the worst thing.
I run a Slack for my company, and so I'm the de facto, like, IT person at my company. So I'm also a Slack admin. And we have probably, like, 8 to 10 shared channels at any given time, because we do that with all of our clients, and we have multiple clients. So we have all these shared channels, and since they released share channels, you've been able to, anyone that's in the share channel, so that's a channel that's between both organizations, and people kind of have to opt into that, right? I mean, I guess the same moderation problems, but anybody in there I can DM, and
that part is cool.
And it looks identical to this. This is just sort of skipping the share channel step.
Yeah.
But it's still between 2 Slack organizations, to Freddie's point of, like, if you're not on a work Slack, then it's kind of strange to be with someone else who is, or vice versa.
Yeah, it's interesting. And you know what? Like, the thing that really struck me, I will tell you something. I've worked on a feature that's sort of similar in terms of, like an invite process that was like this at Shopify, where you could invite a merchant to work with you on something. So you are an expert in what you do. You can invite a merchant and they can let you into their store without like weird permissions things. But we spent a lot of time thinking through, should we let people send custom messages without permission? Answer, no. Should they be allowed to request at them at all unless the merchant has turned on a thing that says, I would like to get requests? Also no. In fact, I think we actually ended up building something where there's a special code. There's two options. It's like people with my code can request, or nobody can request, or allow all requests, actually, I think it is. And so if they have your special like pin, they can request it. And that way it's like, it's mutual. And that's what struck me about this is like, at least for me, my experience at Shopify has been like, if this was in a UX review for 5 seconds, like we would have asked these questions. It's really bizarre.
I mean, maybe they have, and they just decided that there's other reasons that way heavier or whatever. But to me, it just feels like there's like a weird consent thing going on that doesn't feel extremely right. Mm-hmm. And especially when it comes to work, I think those things are extremely important. Yeah. Because I was also thinking you can't block anyone, right? But like, no, and cannot. Then they point to HR, right? Yeah. Which is like nice and easy. But can HR then block someone for you? I don't think so either.
No, they can block them by firing them. Yeah. But that's, like I have been in situations where this has happened on previous tools, and like all HR could do was say, you can't talk to, like, do not engage with that person. Like, it's crazy that they can, like, sure, make HR have the control over that, sure. Like, but there should be something. Like, there should be something.
I think that my assumption here is that this was something that Slack was working on before they were acquired. But at some point, we have to start saying, like, is this a Salesforce feature? Like, when does this become Salesforce Slack? Where you're like,
the day you log in and there's a Salesforce logo.
Yeah.
I guarantee that's going to happen one day. It'll be a cloud instead. Just so you know, I do have to go in 2 minutes. So if you have any parting thoughts, now is the time to share them.
Yeah, I mean, you could have done this before by adding someone as a guest to your Slack, but then they would get your team tile in the sidebar of Slack. And so if someone did this with a lot of people, they would have like a long list of teams they're in where they're only in like one shared channel or one shared... Well, they'd have to be in a channel, which could have been created just for the ability to bring them in and then DM them. Right. So it's really not solving like a ton, but it's definitely creating a ton of problems. So I don't know the balance here was really worth it for Slack.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, they walked it back pretty quick. We'll see how they try and relaunch it. But I'm going to launch into the thank yous. Thank you if you're listening on Twitter Spaces. I wish there was a way to like chat a little bit more so that like...
Yeah, I wish there was a chat.
But I guess that's what tweeting is for. But thank you for listening. We're trying to experiment with this every 2 weeks. So if you have feedback, feel free to DM us. But it's sort of fun to do the live format. We'll get better at inviting people up in the future. It's just something we're slow to get used to. I have a bit of like stranger... I don't know. I've been on the internet too long. It's like... In the 90s, I was told not to talk to anybody I didn't know, and so I don't know, but we'll get better at it with time. But thanks for listening if you're there. If you enjoyed this, our podcast is published on Spotify, all the places. You can search Charge Tech Podcast and get it there. You'll hear the people who were recorded if it works this time. We also have a community Discord where we talk about these things. If you go to chargepodcast.com, there's a button you can join. It's like an invite only, air quotes, to reduce spam and make it a safe space. And on that note, I'm going to say goodbye.
Goodbye, friends.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.